Okay, you can take this. Thank you. दरवाज़ा बंद कर देना. Namaste. Let us get started with a short prayer. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvisha vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So, if we analyze our lives, analyze our behavior, our conduct, the way we experience our life, what characterizes it is that we are all looking for happiness. So that is the common theme amongst all living beings, and particularly in the case of human beings, the quest for happiness is very fundamental. And many of us never really discover that there is a possibility of unconditional happiness. We take for granted that happiness has to be acquired, and we are this attitude is confirmed by things where by doing some things I do get a moment of happiness, more than a moment, some prolonged happiness, but it does not last. And so many of us are used to it. We say this is what life is all about, this is the best you can do. Try to prolong happiness as much as possible, but eventually this is not possible. Then there comes a quest where you start inquiring into the very science of happiness. You know, we discussed that before, that if you have a problem, physical problem, some skin problems, and for a while you can run to the local pharmacy and talk to the pharmacist and says, you know, this is the kind of problem that I'm having. Do you have some medicines that you can help me? And the pharmacist has had some experience with issues like this, and he says, yes, I think we have some ointments that you can use. And you bring home that ointment and it seems to work. But then the problem keeps reappearing and in fact gets expanded in many cases, and it's very possible that either you can keep on doing just stay with the symptoms and do a pharmacy kind of ointment kind of an approach, or if you become more afflicted with the problems. And this is where our acharyas have pointed out, our teachers in Vedanta have pointed out. Vedanta says this, that in many ways an enhanced sense of unhappiness is a blessing. It's a blessing. We should really see this. We should see it's like a blessing in disguise. Because the same example, that if you were content with having a solution to a skin problem that occasionally pops up and never really becomes a serious problem, then you are never going to look for a doctor that gives you some idea of what the disease is. I think many of you are aware of the fact that I'm actually talking from some experience. This is about 25 years ago, where I started to develop some skin rashes. And I went through the whole thing and went to the pharmacist and so on. And it seemed to help, but it never really went away. And then, luckily for me, it got a lot worse. And then I went through a stage where I actually went to the local qualified dermatologists. And believe it or not, after a number of years of trial, this went on for a number of years, even they could not help me. Couldn't help me. And I was getting really desperate, I think, at this, very frustrated at least, and possibly desperate. This was not life-threatening, but it was a huge problem. My whole skin was covered with rashes, and I have to keep on applying things, and it was not a pleasant thing to do. Then something, Providence really helped me a lot. There was a person visiting us from India, and she is a distant cousin of my wife. His wife was visiting anyway. So she looked at me and he says, are you having some skin problems? Because she could tell that I was scratching myself and all that. So I said, yes. She says, you know what? My husband used to have the same thing. And there is a doctor in New Delhi who is, it turns out, is an Ayurveda doctor. And so this is the alternative medicine. This is the Ayurveda is a very, very old and reliable science of medicine. And she says, I think you should really talk to him. And of course, I'm here, I can't go to New Delhi. So she says, I tell you what, you write your symptoms down on a piece of paper and you give it to me. I will take it because I'm going back to Delhi. And then you can talk to him on the phone if you want to do that. My God, my problems were solved. And I still remember, all this is relevant. You're saying, why is this guy talking about his own problems? This is all relevant to what I'm about to say. So his name is Dr. Bhatt, and I really see him very, very often. Every time I go to India, I was just there a couple of months ago, because my tendencies are still there. But I think what Ayurveda does is to neutralize it with the right food, with the right. Because in Ayurveda, the medicines are also food. They are not artificial medicines. So what he's told me, I remember this is my first conversation with him. He said, Mr. Kapoor, let me tell you, this is a piece of cake for me. I still remember, as soon as I heard it, half my problems went away. He said it with such conviction in his voice that I said, oh my God, I am so happy to find someone that knows what my problem is. The second thing he said, there was two things he said. The first one was that I've seen this before, this is easy to fix. Well, not easy, but it's fixable. The second thing he said was, I hope you have patience because it might take months, not weeks, to cure. And at that time I was so happy, I said, I don't care. I've been suffering for, I think at that time, like 5 years. And 6 months seems nothing. And sure enough, so I got the medicines from there. First few weeks, nothing happened. Next month, 20%. And he was right. By the time the 6 month came, it was pretty much gone. And now I'm on dosage. I still take these Ayurvedic medicines to keep it down. I still have some rashes here and there, but they're minor, no problems. So, those of us, Shastra says, our spiritual wisdom says, that have more than a normal share of unhappiness are very lucky. Now, actually, this is very interesting because Swami Dayanand used to say that. He says, if you look at the people who resort to the teaching of Vedanta, it's like a bell-shaped curve. The two ends are people who are quite happy with their lives. And for whatever, they have friends, they have money, they have jobs, they have a family, friendship, whatever. And you talk to them about Vedanta and they will say, well, I don't understand, why do you have to go through all this? I'm happy. The other end of the spectrum is where people are extremely unhappy. They've got physical problems, they've got mental problems, whatever it is. They will also not come to Vedanta. It is slightly the right of the curve where you have more than normal problems and you are worried and you are looking for some help. This is the right spectrum of people that resort to Vedanta. So anyway, as I one time Swami Dayanandji used to had said that. I still remember this so well. So there was a satsang. Satsang meaning just after a class, people were asking questions and so on. So somebody raised their hand and said, Swamiji, I love what you're teaching. And I have some friends that I would love to have them come and learn from you. But they're not interested. I talked to them and they said, no, we're happy. Why do we need to go through this? What to do about that? So Swamiji says, there is a way to talk to them. And the way is, don't push it. Then say, no, you have to come to this class, this teacher is excellent, don't do that. Don't do this, it doesn't work. Force doesn't work on this kind of a thing. It has to be much more voluntary. But keep the conversation going. How? Ask them, how is life? And they'll say, everything is very well, absolutely, just fine. How about your job? Well, the job is not as good. My boss is, I'm looking for a change. He's really not a good boss. Okay, then you talk about children, if they have children. Well, I'm having some problems because they don't study very. Swamiji says, if you keep on pursuing their life's issues, then you say, you know what? If you want to solve all of them or most of them, you should look into Vedanta. So he says this is the way to do that. Anyway, so going ahead with our narrative, where we were was that if we have more than the usual share of issues in our life, then we are open. And sometimes it just comes to you. Like in the case of my wife's cousin's wife, this was a gift from Ishvara. And I have come to recognize that from time to time. Really, there's God's presence in terms of things that you don't Sometimes you feel that I have to work for my happiness. No, it just comes to you. Just like you, unhappiness also comes to you without asking, happiness also comes to you without asking. Anyway, so if we become somewhat frustrated in life and even desperate, then somehow the help comes and we look into the analysis of Vedanta. And one issue that comes in is most people that have not reached that stage don't know that they are imprisoned in the sense of limitation. They feel this is okay. These days are extraordinary days when we are imprisoned. This is an interesting thing. Supposing you are sitting in a room and you are watching television and you're fine, everything is okay, you're having dinner, whatever it is. Then, and you actually voluntarily close the door. Like I have right now, I have closed all the doors and so on so that I can conduct this class. Suppose I want to open the door and it is locked from outside. Imagine, or I tell you what, I have a better scenario. You are sitting there quietly in the room just enjoying yourself, and there is a program on TV or on the phone which says, by the way, you cannot leave your home. This is exactly our situation with coronavirus. Now, you know what? Before that, I wasn't going to leave the home. Now I want to leave the home because the sense of imprisonment is suffocating. I don't like it. Hey, before that you didn't want to come out of the home. But now somebody is telling me you cannot go out of the home. Now you're reacting. So this is the very interesting issue that most people don't know, that they are limited and in a kind of a prison of life. They don't know that. Yes, death is there, but that's long ways away and so on and so forth. I'm free and so on. And but then when problems become a little bit more acute as a blessing, as we talked about, you begin to see, my goodness, I am surrounded. I cannot seem to open any doors. And I can open some doors, but eventually I cannot. In San Jose, California, very close to where I live, there is a very famous monument called the Winchester Mystery House. So a little bit of history for that. So there was a gentleman who had invented the Winchester gun a long time ago, 100 years ago. And that became so popular that he made tons of money. Kind of like the AK-47 gun. So, and then he died and his wife survived him. And she was doing some construction in her home and she loved it. She loved the fact that she was a boss and she could get the contractors working all the time, make corrections, adding to the home. Except that she, as soon as the construction would stop, she would become unhappy. There's nothing to do. So she kept on adding more and more rooms. And it has become bizarre. You can go and visit it sometime. It is a house with rooms after rooms after rooms. You can go from one room to the other and then come out from a different way. I think when I was younger, I had visited that once. It's called the Winchester Mystery House. Vedanta says life is a Winchester Mystery House. We are forever opening doors. Maybe if I get a better job, I'll become very happy. And you got it. You got the better job. You find you are not as happy as you thought you were going to be. Well, maybe if I can divorce my present spouse because he is giving me a lot of issues. I think I need to make a fresh start. Okay, do it. You made a divorce and you think that now and you're actually, first the divorce itself must have been very time consuming, but after that you were happy for a while. Now you find you are not very happy as you thought you were. So the point is that we try all these kinds of things. It's like opening doors. And what happens is that you keep on opening doors to find other rooms that are still keeping you locked. One analogy we have is like being in a maze. You know, you have these mazes that you enter and you've got to figure out how to negotiate it so that you can come out. And many times you go here and there and you find that no, this is not leading to it's a dead end. Our life many times is like that. Not many times, it is always like that. That really you can have symptomatic relief, but unconditional happiness is very difficult to find. So here, Vedanta comes in and says, listen, it is because you don't have the right key to open all doors, a master key. So you ask, is there a key like that? Can I have it? Yes, there is a key like that, and you can have it. Wow, that would be great. So Vedanta says, Vedanta means our spiritual wisdom of Shastra, of the Vedas, that key is the ability to distinguish between appearance and reality. This is the key. What? As simple as that? It appears very simple, but there's a lot to it. Anyway, that is the key. The key to obtaining unconditional joy, the freedom that we all seek, is the ability to do a viveka, to distinguish between appearance and reality. Learn about it, become good at it, master it, use it, test it, have complete trust in it, never discard it, pursue it, love it. This is what is called spiritual maturity. World maturity you can get. Ishvara, God has given you physical maturity very easily. You keep on eating things and you'll increase your height, and then by the end of your 17th, 18th year, you've now become fully, sometimes later, you've become physically mature. Mental maturity, more difficult, but you can get it. Maturity means the ability to accept my limitations, not to be too upset with them, have a reasonable relationship with the people around me, etc., and not be too upset with things that are happening, not be sensitive, overly sensitive to things. Reasonable way of having an equilibrium is called mental maturity, and you can get that. It's not a problem. But spiritual maturity means the ability to really distinguish between appearance and reality. I may have given you this example before. Forgive me if this is a repetition, but really is one of my favorite examples of all times, which is that this woman who was an actor, had 2 children. One was, they were about 6 years apart. So one was, say, about 3 years old and the other one was 9 years old. And she would normally leave them with a babysitter when she would go in for her acting assignment and so on. And but this one time the babysitter could not come, so she told the kids, listen, you just come and stay on the side of the stage where I'm going to be acting and do your homework, and it will take about an hour, 2 hours or so, but I won't be able to talk to you, but just don't be disturbed, everything is fine. It turns out that she was playing the role of a battered wife in this play. And as part of that, she gets hit by her husband on the stage, and who kicks her and so on and so forth, and she cries, and her hair is, a real depiction of a battered wife. This is her role was. So the play starts, and the 2 kids are sitting there, doing their doodling and so on. Pretty soon the bad scenes come, and the husband gets all mad at her and said, this, that, or the other, and starts beating her up. The 3-year-old gets very disturbed by this. She says, my mom is getting hit, and this guy is beating her up. This is not right. I don't like it. So what she does is she leaves her work and she rushes onto the stage, and her older sister is saying, wait, please, wait, don't go in there. She's okay. This is just a play. And this 3-year-old says, I don't understand what you're talking about, a play, and this is okay. My mom is getting hit and I don't like it. I'm going to go in. The director and the producer, they all put the curtain down. This woman, her daughter, just clings to her and says, Mom, what's happening to you? Who is this guy who's beating you up? The whole play had to be stopped. So this is the maturity, the distinction of maturity between a 3-year-old and a 9-year-old. The 9-year-old knows that this is a play. And the woman her mother had already probably talked to her and said, listen, I am getting a lot of money. And there's this guy appears to hit me, but it doesn't really hurt me that much. And if it hurts, I don't mind for a couple of minutes because I get a lot of money for this. This is my job. So don't be disturbed about it. Is that okay? So 9-year-old says, yeah, okay, all right, if you say so. You cannot reason like this to the 3-year-old. Why? Because the 3-year-old cannot distinguish between what is a play and what is not a play. Our situation is exactly like that. We cannot distinguish between what is an appearance and what is reality. And we have to be educated. And this education is spiritual maturity. And this spiritual maturity, which consists of a mastery over distinguishing between appearance and reality, is the main key that opens my doors to unconditional happiness. This is the key. So, here, lots of examples are given. Lots of examples. I just gave you one example. I think that the example of a play and non-play is very important. It's very important. I gave you the example of very similar to that, where there was a person who invited his uncle from a village to view a soccer match between two people. And the soccer match was very well contested. There was a lot of fouls and this, that, or the other. And then he turned to his uncle and said, "Did you enjoy that? Wasn't that a wonderful game?" And the uncle said, "Don't you have a lot of money?" So he says, "Yes, I own this club." So he says, "I don't understand. Why did you not give 22 balls to all the 22 people? Why did they have to fight over a single ball?" So this guy said, "Oh my God, I can't believe this." So the ability to distinguish between a play and a non-play is very important. So there are lots of examples given here. So the one example which is perhaps the most important example for understanding how to use the key is the following. And I think we have already talked about it, but it bears repeating. This is the classical rope and snake example. And it's interesting, the other day, my wife had turned on this television show. I'm talking about snakes for a minute, just to kind of build up to this example. And there was this woman, I forget her name. I don't think I even knew her name. But she travels around the world looking for different cultures, experiences, animals, and she's very sensitive to different animals. So she had a show recently, I don't know if many of you saw that, which was on the river Ganges, Ganga, it is called in India, but in Western called Ganges, which is so she was talking about the very length of the river and so on and so forth, but she was focusing on the various animals that live close to the river. And in the Bengal area, she was talking about the rice paddies, because it's a very fertile land. The river gives a lot of beautiful fertile lands, and so rice grows a lot. So they have 3 crops a year of rice. Can you believe it? Anyway, the main focus there was the abundance of snakes, because the snakes also find the right climate to stay there. And so they, in the rice fields, when all this vegetation comes up, they can hide and so on. What a scary, it just reminded me about my own childhood. And this showed about dangerous snakes like cobra that are going in and out of villages. And in fact, they showed a picture of a sleeping woman. And I don't know how they took the picture. They must have anticipated this cobra comes in and goes right next to her and then goes over to the other side. It is absolutely scary, I tell you, because this one little bite can kill you. So and in India, snakes are plentiful. Just to extend that story for just a second, my wife and I were in New Delhi a year back, and we had come back from Indore, and so we had taken Uber from the airport to our home. So we started talking to the Uber driver and how's life. And the guy was saying, my God, I have such a bad, I have overwork, and my children cannot get education at a good school, they are too expensive. It was going on, very sad story. So I told him that, you're living in a big city, why don't you move to a smaller city? I was in Indore recently. It's a very beautiful city. And she says, yes, actually my wife is from that area. I says, perfect. I said, I have some connections. If you want, I can ask you to, they will need your services and so on. He says, sir, I cannot do that. So I says, why not? He said to me, it is so fascinating. He said, my wife is from that area and she is deadly afraid of snakes in the villages. And ever since we moved to New Delhi, which is of course a big metropolis, there we don't find any snakes and she's very happy. So we cannot go back to Indore. I said, oh my God, I didn't even think about that. So anyway, the snake and rope example is a very good one. And so please pay particular attention to this. So the story is that one time a person was walking and he seemed to be nicked on the leg. And he looked down and he found that there was what appeared to be is a 3-foot snake coiled together. He said, oh my God, I think I might have been bitten by a snake and this is going to be the ruin. So he started looking for some medicine. So he went to his spouse and said, honey, I think I've been, there's a snake in our backyard and I was just walking there. She says, snake here? I haven't seen it. So this is kind of like a dusk area, which was not completely dark, but not completely lighted. In the semi-dark, he saw it as a snake, and she took a flashlight, went there, and said, oh my God, this looks like a snake, but it is a rope. So she called her husband. He says, please don't call the doctor because this is not a snake that it was. He says, what are you talking about? I know it was a snake. I could even, I could see I think it was moving and it bit me. So don't argue with me. She says, no, come here. I'm going to show it to you. So this is the example. Taking a harmless rope to be a harmful snake because of insufficient data and having some background on snakes, having fear of snakes, like we were just discussing and so on. He says, so this is the classically important example in Vedanta, which we will dwell on and rely on for a number of our life's experiences. And this has lots of implications. So, for instance, there is the implication of, not the implication, a lot of detail. I wouldn't say even an implication, but a lot of detail. One of the details is, this is what is called Anyonya Bhavaha in Sanskritam, and it's called mutual dependence. Mutual dependence. It is a little bit like the example that we gave between the fire and the iron ball, or the electricity and the appliance. So what happens is, but here this is something very, very funny and very, very important. Not only funny, but very important. The characteristics of the rope have been transferred over to the characteristics of the snake, and the characteristics of the snake have been transferred over to the characteristics of the rope. So if a person were to describe a snake, he doesn't say that it was a 10-foot snake. He said it's a 3-foot snake because the rope was only 3 foot. And if you were to ask, did it have any bends? Yes, it had 2 bends. And those were the 2 bends from the rope. And how thick was it? Oh, it was about an inch, maybe inch and a half. That is exactly the thickness of the rope. And yet, the characteristics of the snake were superimposed on the rope. Because the rope is not moving, but it seemed like it was moving. The rope didn't have any reason to nick you, to bite you, but it seemed like it bit me. So there is a anyonya bhavaha. There is a mutual superimposition that creates a situation which is false. So please remember this story, and we will invoke it at the appropriate time as we go on. So anyway, going back to the fundamental method of Vedanta, which we are going to see a lot of in the Drg Drsya Viveka, is that the key to happiness is to distinguish between appearance and reality. And so we took some fundamental steps last week to look into that. One of them being that please see the nature of reality. Observe the nature of reality. This is what's called ontology. And in Vedantic way of looking at it, the nature of reality has 3 versions, not 2. Because normally we only look upon things in a black and white, in a 2-stage. Was it there? No, I didn't see it. So the thing was not there, then I conclude that it was not there. It's not true. And if I saw someone and say, yes, I saw that person. Vedanta says there is a 3rd possibility. This doesn't happen very often, but your, like supposing you went to a farmer's market. There are lots of people and so on and so forth. And you come home and you tell your spouse, oh, I saw someone there at the farmer's market. I didn't get a chance to talk to him, but I was surprised to see him. And she says, what? He's not supposed to be here. He's on in a different area. And then you feel, I think that was him. I think So she says, okay, let's go give them a call. You call the guy and he says, Bill, were you there in the farmer's market? So he says, what are you talking about? What farmer's market? So that means that someone looked like Bill, but it was not Bill. This is the third possibility. It turns out, so this is what is called mithya. So this middle place, the middle one, which looks like reality but it isn't, is crucial for our lives, as we will see. This is a very important one. So Vedanta says that, again, following up on the very key, which is the distinguishing between appearance and reality, is absolutely the key. So there we, again, to reiterate, the definition of the three states of reality must be clear to us. So one is Satyam, the second one is Mithya, and the third one is Asatyam. Asatyam means not true. First is true, second one is appears to be true, and the third one is doesn't appear to be true at all. It's not there at all. Now let's look at the definition of Satyam. We have to define it very carefully so that we can follow. This is like a filter. You define the filter and you define, I'm going to look at everything through this filter of this definition. Does it match the requirements of this filter? So what is the requirement? What is the filter for Satyam? The Satyam filter is, it is never untrue under any circumstances. Never. Always true, independent of anything else. Time, space, other things that limit it, nothing limits it. It is completely true. This is the airtight definition of Satyam. Obviously, the question that occurs in our mind is, well, you can define the Satyam any way you like. You're the one who's doing it, but is there anything like that? Are you not just imagining there is something like this? We don't find anything in the world which is really fulfills the definition of Satyam. The answer is, that's what you think. Just wait and we will show it to you. You just do not grasp it at this point, but doesn't mean it is not there. So please accept my definition of Satyam for now, provisionally. Then you can go to the other extreme, which is Asatyam, which is also has another word in Sanskrit called Tucham. So either Asatyam or Tucham, doesn't matter. But in English translation would be never true. Under any circumstances. Never true. Absolutely not. And the classical example is that of a square circle. Never true. Absolutely no way. There's no such thing as the square circle. Another one given is that of the horns on a rabbit. Just do not. Rabbit and horns do not coexist. No such thing as that. Like a circle and a square. So that is the definition of Asatyam. Then the third one, which is the real interesting one, is Mithya, which is defined as even though it looks like Satyam, it is not Satyam. It looks true, but it is not. And it's different from not true because it does appear. You see, a not true will not even appear. But a mithya may appear to be true. So in the example of this woman who had the 3-year-old and the 9-year-old, she is not really being hit by a person, or at least not being hurt by a person, but she appears to be hurt. There's a possibility of your mistaking it to be real. This is the key, which is the mithya. So now the next question is, under what circumstances is mithya different from satyam? When can you tell that this is mithya? Okay, I provisionally accept your definition, and I can see from my experience that there are things that appear to be mithya. And you know, this is interesting. One other thing before I go forward with that, there is a doubt in people's mind that wait, a thing which is not real cannot really affect me. This is not a good assumption. So we can see that in the case of the mother of the 3-year-old, it is not true, and yet it affects the 3-year-old. And similarly, you cannot say that a rope will never bother you because it is not harmful if the main thing is what I think of the rope. The rope is not harming, but if I think that it is not a rope, it is harmful, then that's really what matters. And the last example is that you can go watch a movie, and the movie, even though this is just a projection, there is no reality to it, but it can make you cry or laugh as though it is real. So don't say that mithya is not important because really what matters is only what is true. No. The whole creation, in fact, is full of mithya. It's all 99% mithya. Anyway, we'll come to that later on. So now we go back to our definition. How do you, under what circumstances, can you distinguish a mithya from satyam? Okay, let's pursue that. What it is saying is satyam never changes. Right? Truth is one which remains constant under all circumstances. If that is the case, if something changes, then it is not Satyam. We are being true to this definition, that if something changes, then it cannot be Satyam. So now we enter into Drg Drsya Viveka with this background. So the very first verse says, learn to distinguish between Satyam and Mithya. The very first verse makes it very clear. So let's briefly get into it in the time that we have. And we will now pursue this completely with the next class. But let us get into it without waiting. So the first verse says, Rupam Drishyam Lochanam Drg Tadrishyam Driktu Manasam Drishyadhi Vrittaya Sakshi Drigeva Natu Drishyate. This is what the first verse says. So the meaning is, look at your eyes, observe your eyes, and by the eyes, all the sense organs, ears, skin, nose, the ability to smell, all of those will be discussed later. But we focus in on the eyes. It says, look at this. The eye is the one which, remaining the same, is able to distinguish various forms. I can tell this is a sofa, this is a table, this is a lamp, this is the wall, etc. All the various things that I see. And I see this with an unchanging eye. You have to have an unchanging entity to detect change. If it is a different eye that sees different objects, that will not fly. That will not work. So, for instance, if the thing is long or short, whether it is black or white, all of these distinguishing characteristics of forms are only possible if the eye remains the same. Observe this. Rupam Drishyam. Forms are seen. Lochanam Drik. Lochanam means the eye, is the seer. The eye is the seer, means there is a singularity about it. You see, it is not just it is not just the seer and seen. That's not the main objective of this verse. Of course, that is also the case. The seer and the seen distinction is there. But the real thing we are looking at is the singularity of the seer and the multiplicity of the seen. This functioning apparatus will fall down if I have to have different eyes for different things. I have the same eye for different things, not different eyes for different things. This has to be observed. Okay, I observe it. Now what? Now comes the fun. Rupam drishyam lochanam drik. Tat drishyam driktu manasam. He says that the eye in turn becomes the seen, not the seer. It was the seer with respect to forms, and it has a singularity to it. It had a sort of like a semblance of satyam, right? Because the satyam means unchanging. And so indeed, the eye is unchanging with respect to the various forms. But now observe that the eye itself becomes the seen. And not only that, it changes. Like the forms change, the eye also keeps changing. How? This will be detailed in the second, third, and fourth and fifth verses, because we can briefly talk about it here. You can tell whether your eyes are seeing well or not. And you can only tell the mind is the seer. And the mind, the thoughts can tell whether the eye is seeing well. It's not seeing as clearly as before, or, heaven forbid, it cannot see at all. It can see clearly. This will come in Andyamandya Patutveshu Netra Dharmeshu Chaikadha. Second verse. But all the first one verse says is the eye is fixed with respect to the forms, and the eye now assumes a completely different role of, instead of being a drik, a seer forever, it in turn becomes a seen. This is a phenomena which means the eye is mithya, not satyam. So, this is the analysis which has gotten started, and we will now go rapidly into the application of this analysis, the application of this filtering process to arrive at the real Satyam, which we didn't think existed, but it does. And so we will see that with the completion of the first verse and the expansion into the verses 3, 4, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So essentially what will happen is that the kernel, the essence of this teaching was all comprised on verse number 1 itself. It will be complete. Verses number 2, 3, 4, and 5 are secondary verses to confirm what the first verse is saying. So that grouping of 5 verses really gives you the essence of the teaching. And so I don't know how many classes might take. I think maybe 1, maybe 2. So we will complete it. And then we will pause. So let us finish the class, but I do have a couple of things that I wanted to convey to you. So let me say the prayers first, and then we will, I want to talk to you about a couple of things that are relevant to the classes. Om Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. So there are 3 topics I want to talk to you about related to these classes. The first one is that a part and parcel of these classes is going to be able to meditate. So the first topic is meditation, dhyanam, which later turns into nididhyasanam, but for most part really dhyanam. So what we will do is every 3rd or 4th class we will do considerable meditation. We can't do every time because we won't have enough time to do the teaching. But what I want to do is to really insert that every now and then. And very possibly in the very first class, next class itself, we will start. And when we do meditation, it will be in the beginning of the class, not at the end of the class. Okay? So the meditation that we do in Vedanta has 2 parts to it. The first part is preparation, and I'm just talking to many of you that already know this because you've been with me for a while. But for those of you that are new, I'm just repeating it, that the meditation that we do, it has 2 parts to it. The first one is just a preparation, just to calm your mind down and to focus it and to absorb it. And there is no teaching involved in the first part. So we need to do a couple of those, and we won't have to wait for a month. Maybe 2 successive classes we will do so that the preparation is done. Then the real meditation starts when some material has already been taught. And so, for example, when we finish verse number 5, comprising of the essential teaching, then we will do a meditation, which might happen in about 4 or 5 weeks from now. And what I would like to do then is to repeat the real meditation, because the preparation I won't repeat after it is done, so I expect that you will be able to prepare yourself. But the real teaching meditation we will repeat every 4 weeks at a very minimum, possibly even more frequently. And I'm thinking that I would say generally speaking the meditation will be for about 20 to 25 minutes. And so when we do the meditation, we may extend the class by about 10 minutes, 15 minutes or so. So instead of ending it at 11, today it's already 11:08. On the days when we do meditation, we will go past 11 by 10-15 minutes, if that's okay with you. So I just want to give you the program for meditation. So this is the topic number 1. The second topic is that even though I will not have notes for you on each class, I did that a couple of classes ago, as you know, and I don't think I need to do it every time, but anytime there is some new material that needs some explanation, then I will give you a set of notes. But what I'm saying is, do not expect notes on all the classes. The reason I'm saying that is that I encourage you to keep a notebook and pen handy for taking rough notes. Notes about things that strike you, something that you felt, yeah, this is something good, I want to really note this thing down. Note it down. And I'm saying this for 2 reasons. One is topic number 2, and the third one is topic number 3. Topic number 2 is, I would like to give you a quiz after some major topics are finished. It's very possible that after the verse number 5 is finished, I may give you a quiz. I don't know, I haven't decided yet. And I would like you to take the quiz like we did before also, and then send it to me, and I want to get an idea of how well you are absorbing all this. So that is the topic number 2, and for that reason, taking notes would be good, so that it helps you to do well in the quizzes. And I'll do maybe a couple of quizzes, possibly more, and then maybe a final exam in the end. I don't know yet. I haven't decided on that. Topic number 3, last one. I request you to challenge yourself with the following. I request you that at the end of the entire course on Drg Drsya Viveka, which is an advanced introduction to Vedanta, you will in fact please teach it to others. And this is not a discussion between equals. This is a class where you teach it to some people. Use this text for doing so. We couldn't really use a text the last time when we did this before chapter 7. But here now we have a text. And so I think I would like you that your own understanding will be a lot clearer if you're able to teach it to some other people at the end of this. I'm talking about maybe a year from now or something. But your notes will be useful in compiling a set of, just like I'm doing for my own teaching. I go over some notes ahead of time. Do that for yourself for teaching. So I would say those 3 topics: meditation, second one is some quizzes, and the third one is challenging you to really complete your own understanding by visualizing your teaching and then actually doing it at the end of this course. All right, thank you, and let me see if there's any questions. Good to see a lot of different people. Andrea, Ramanan, Renu Daswani, Jennifer Sterling, Laurel Donovan, Maitri Ramakrishna, Renu Daswani, Shanti Kumar again, thank you. Shri Savanapuri and Shri Greenbaum, B.R. Bob Srinivas, Varun, Anita Washenreich, I'm not sure. Namaste from Germany, how wonderful. Yuki, Nancy Preston from New York, Sushma Bhatia, Sam Dillon, Chandra Dulam, Subroto, Barbara Weichman, Carol Tornelli, Camille Coates, Akshar Dalal, Choba Dalal, Umid Chopra, Lichi Chu, Panna Chitalia, Greg Askew, Arvind Taylor, Shanti Kumar again, and Ashok. Wonderful. So let me, Sanjay Sethi, Suzanne Narayan. Wonderful. Shanti Kumar says, I heard that it is said that Sukha, happiness, is the prasad of the Lord, and Dukkha is Mahaprasad, that problems are even better. In that sense, what we talked about, I think makes sense, but not really. I think Sukha and Dukkha are the result of our past karmas. And that's all there is to it, really. We can visualize dukkha by seeking some help, but normally we don't. We just succumb to the pressure of dukkha and don't ask for any help. But if we can, that is the correct way of handling adversity in our life. The adversity should prompt us for inquiry, for seeking help, and to understand why is it happening. This is the final analysis yet. Jacqueline, you use the term vastu for human being. How does the meaning of this term differ from swabhava of our own being? Jacqueline, this is an important question that you're asking, and we will answer that in due time in more detail. Excuse me, but since you asked, the difference between vastu and swabhava is another way to do that is called swarupa. So the swarupa is the vastu, and swabhava is something else. And the best way to explain at this point is the person and personality. So the vastu is the person and swabhava is the personality. And the distinction between these two is you never get rid of the swarupa because that's you, but personality is temporary, it can come and go, you can change it. Yes, you have some natural personality which is fixed for a life. Some of it you can develop. But in any case, that is fluid. Vastu, the swarupa, is you, the satyam, which you do not change, which you just have to understand. You don't know exactly what it is, not you personally, but I'm just in general. All right, Jacqueline has another question. Another question in the text is written, the eye is perceived, but the mind is the perceiver. Does this mean the same as the eye is the perceiving, but the mind is the perceiver? No. This we will, Jacqueline, we will go over this in much more detail in the next class. The eye is the perceived and the mind is the perceiver. And so it is always two states, Drg and Drsya. It is a perceiver in some sense, but it is perceived in another sense. That's what makes it mithya. Anyway, I'll clarify this in more detail in the next time. Very nice to see so many people, and I'm very happy to see people from Europe also being able to come to this live class. Kirsten, she was there in the first class also. Wonderful. So my good wishes to all of you. If there is no other question, I'll wait for a minute. And if not, then we will close the class. And we will see you next week. All right. Thank you so much. Om.